Hello, and welcome to this episode of ACE Parenting Together, authentic, connected, and empathic. I'm Babak Saraje, and I'm here with my co-host, Melissa LaPlante. We bring you fresh ideas about best parenting practices, along with time-tested communication skills to use in real-life situations to help you and your children be your authentic selves, build empathic connections, and thrive in your relationships. And today, the topic of our podcast is children are people.
Children are people. I love that. I love that. That's interesting. Tell me more about what sparked that particular topic.
Yeah, so I came to this sort of becoming more and more passionate about parenting and eventually being a certified instructor. This story kind of started about 20 years ago. Actually, following just reading about rather famous physicist by the name of David Deutsch and reading his books and then reading some other writing that he had, I came to realize that he also was a creator of sort of a philosophy of parenting that is called taking children seriously. And so I, found that website and read a bunch of the articles, and it really resonated with me because taking children seriously, they're basically they're people, right? They have all the qualities of people, and it's to me, at least at the time, I mean, I was not a parent yet, and so it was a little bit more abstract. But later on, when I had kids of my own, I had this urgency of a new parent, and I went back and I started reading more, and I felt, yeah, I agree with all of this. However, in real life situations, in practice, I was having all sorts of problems implementing those ideas. I felt very not well equipped to take children seriously. And so a few years later, my wife actually introduced me to parent effectiveness training, and I read the book. I was like, yeah, this fits right in. This is really what I sort of was missing, and it's chock full of practical skills, communication skills that actually gave me the toolbox that I needed to implement the ideas that I had already seen in taking children seriously. So that's what I mean sort of by children are people. Of course, it's hard to describe what people are, right? But people do a lot of things. And we know, for example, they value their autonomy and they have agency and they want to be able to make their own decisions. They have creativity. They can solve problems. They can come up with solutions nobody has thought about in the past, right? And they have rights. And you know, at least for me, a big human right is to be able to meet one's own need. Of course, this goes over not just basic needs or physical needs, but also emotional needs, social needs, and all the way you can go all the way to self-actualization. Um, and the other thing is that people behave in ways that they have reasons underlying those behaviors in ways that would meet their needs, or maybe in ways that they find interesting or it's fun. All of that also applies to children.
It's funny. I'm listening to you um, talk about what brought you to this place right here with parent effectiveness training. And I find that when I talk to people who have taken it or who have gone so far as to be certified, everybody kind of has a story about what brought them to parent effectiveness training. And it's funny because my father became trained for the very reason that he was raised in a home. It was a broken home, and he did not have that experience of effective parenting. He was loved, cared for, but he
Mhm.
wanted to do it differently. He wanted to do it better. And my parents did an amazing job of raising all four of us. So I was raised with PET
Mhm.
from very, very, very early on. And I remember sitting in the back of the class. Sometimes I'd have to do my homework while my mom and dad were teaching this class. And in my head, I remember thinking, gosh, doesn't everybody parent this? Like, why do they have a class for this? Because it was
Right.
so natural for me. It was like I didn't realize. And then I went off to college and I was just blown away because I thought everyone was raised that way. And so I remember coming home, from college and just really worshiping the ground my parents walked on because of, I of the hard work they put into that. And it's neat
Yeah,
seeing the same thing from my daughter, when she came home from college. She tells sort of the same thing. She just, both my kids were raised the same way and they didn't know any different. But when they see how different it is with friends and
that's
and the
right.
rest of the world, it's not that way. So it's pretty
Yeah.
cool to have that connection.
That's right. And yes, yeah, you're absolutely right. This is a very different way of doing things because, traditionally, of course, there's also all sorts of maxims and sort of advice or expectations of kids that we have, at least in some ways, we have gone away from, but they're still around. And things like, children should be seen but not heard, and other things like demanding obedience and so on from the kids, or who has the last word in the house. Um, and I was imagining if we really took these statements and applied them at large to the society, to people, it would be a really strange, like it would be, you do not want to live in that society, right? Because if people always have to obey somebody at top whose word is the last word, or they should be seen but not heard, just imagine how life would be for people.
For sure. It's you know, I like to think of it as, you're kind of going against the grain. And when you take the approach of um, you know, communication and
Mhm.
active listening, it can be mistaken for permissive or,
Right,
being a doormat or, a
Mhm.
softie. And in
Right,
fact, that's not the case. In fact, you learn to be assertive. It's quite the
Mhm.
opposite. So,
Right,
but
right.
it's really neat to see it happen.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's no contradiction in expressing your own needs and asserting your own needs without overriding someone else's, right? Still listening to what the other side has to do. And this is sort of, these are, we talked about these a little bit in the last episode, but these are
Yeah.
the things that really empower and enable an approach to not just parenting, but especially to parenting, because children are people, but they are still developing fast. There's a number of things they cannot do as they grow up physically, and so it's really important actually to take that burden of responsibility to treat them as people, and not as things that need to be managed, or trained, or things like that. And so I wanted to also contrast that with, in some more modern or some more recent parenting approaches that have gone away, of course, from these more traditional views of, who has the last word, and, obedience, and things like that, but still focus a lot on behaviors, right? And sort of they come up as a sort of a framework of managing behaviors, or coming up with things like, positive discipline, or, things that sound better than, threats and orders and, punishment, or physical corporal
Sure.
punishment and things like that, but still are trying to manage the behavior with sort of a set
Right.
outcome that the parent has in mind, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Sort of behavior management. And from the clinical standpoint, I see it a lot because as a pediatric speech and language pathologist, a lot of what we do is behavior analysis.
Hmm.
We work alongside with behavior therapists.
Hmm.
Um, and so I am so used to seeing that approach, yet I know from the personal experience that it's so much more effective when the behaviors are managed through communication and when the child is leading the activity,
Hmm.
and you give them autonomy, kids
Hmm.
have an incredibly untapped ability to be creative and to problem solve. And
That's right.
we just aren't giving them enough opportunity.
That's right. Yeah. Sometimes, sometimes I think of what I'm doing as, just kind of step out of the way and let the
Right.
child actually do the thing that they know or and can do.
Yeah.
Still, if they need my help or if I can offer help, I'm there. But I can guide if they need me to. But sometimes you just need to step out of the way, and then they can take the lead. So
Yeah.
we talked a little bit about sort of the underpinnings of this episode's topic, but I want to also go back to some real life examples.
Sure.
I think you were telling me a little bit about an example of picking up your son from middle school. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, I'd love to. And we had the opportunity to bring him in on the conversation before
That's
the
right.
pod to get his. What's really cool is when your kids are a little bit older, you can get their feedback. And I love doing that because I know my kids really appreciate the fact that I value their input. And
Mhm.
it's so helpful to get their feedback. Like I said, especially that they're older. But anyway, yeah. So it was a couple of years ago. He was still in middle school. Um, there were plenty of times when this happened, but this was one time in particular where I picked him up from aftercare. It was 5:30. Um, and he came in the car and he threw his backpack down and I hate school. I hate all my teachers. Um, everybody's just, they're all so annoying and I hate school. So the panic mom alarm went off because that just happens. Not that I allowed my son to hear that, but I immediately thought, okay, what did you do wrong? Which teacher's going to call me or email me?
Right.
So what did you do wrong is my first thought, which is so
Mhm.
frustrating. I wish it wasn't, but I'm human.
Yep.
What I'm proud of is that I don't let it lead um, and take over for the most part.
Hmm. Hmm.
And when I do, I'm able to fix it and apologize. But in this
That's
case,
right.
I fought back and just I thought, okay, let me just listen, let me just hear him out. And so he was complaining that this particular teacher had given them so much homework and they don't have any free time in class, and the
Mm.
work is so hard, and every day it's so much. And I was listening to him, and then I also was thinking in my head, it's 5:30 at night. He's been at school since 7:45. He's
That's right.
tired. He's hungry. It's close to dinner time. And so his emotions are going to be probably more vulnerable.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd like to say angry. And so I started to realize pretty quickly this was just a time where he really needed me to just listen, right?
Yeah.
And to vent. And I said, wow, it sounds like you had a really rough day. Gosh, that's really frustrating, isn't it? Yeah. And then he just was talking out loud, again, venting, and he finally said, I only have, 6 more weeks in this semester, and then I change classes, and, I know it's hard, but I'll have new teachers in the new semester. And so it just, again, had I jumped into um, needing to email a teacher, what did you do wrong? That conversation would have gone so differently.
That's right.
And he was able to vent, work through it. And then the rest of the car ride was quiet. And it's funny because he said to us, when you and I were getting his
Yeah.
feedback, you know, Matthew, in hindsight, what did you want what do you as the child want in those moments? And he
Right.
said, silence.
Yeah.
Just listen. Just let me vent. I don't want your input. Um, and so I'm so thankful that that's what I was able to give him because, 9 times out of 10, just, that's what they need. It just
That's
feels
right.
good to vent it out. And
That's
that
right. That's
situation could have gone complete. Can you imagine if I had blamed him doing something wrong and reached out to his
Yeah.
teachers, and then I'm in control of the situation. This was not my
Yeah.
problem.
That's
So,
right. And or have brought, if you had acted on sort of the concerns and the fears that you had, okay, what's going on, then that could have completely changed that interaction as well. And this is,
sure.
like all people, like sometimes I'm having a bad day. I just want to come and sort of find a quiet place and maybe, just rest and take my mind off. And then I'm ready to interact again. But sometimes we demand too much from children to just be cheerful or, be quiet or, whatever. And that's not what people do.
From a long day of work, how many times do you feel like you need to, decompress? I
That's
have
right.
a good 25-minute commute, and I use that time to sort of decompress. I don't have any noise on, and I just, so that I'm available to my family when I get home. And,
That's right.
this just really falls right into kids are people.
Exactly.
We need to respect the fact that they too have that same need.
That's right. That's right. So they're people. They're, I was, when we were talking before, is like they're people. Of course, they're growing fast. And so a lot of things are changing for them. They may not have some of the capacity physically or emotionally to deal with certain things, or, if they are not tall enough to reach a shelf, right? There's something there that they want. Of course, we'll help them, right? That doesn't mean that they're somehow defective in some way. Um, and this can be also true about adults who may have mobility impairments or other conditions, and we would like to provide solutions, or that they can also do the things that they want as people, right? And that's equally true for children. And so,
Mhm.
um, in that sense, taking children seriously and not overriding their wishes and actually, bringing them in the process is what is really important. And that is the process of living together and growing together. And so
Yeah.
I also
Yeah.
had this example that is not actually from my own life. I'm sure I've been in this situation multiple times, but I was reading this exchange on Twitter actually the other day, last week, and it involved a situation where basically a young, I don't remember the exact age, maybe 2 year old or something like that, who wanted to watch a movie and play with Legos, and the family was going out, within a short span of time, maybe an hour or so. And so they watched the movie, and then the child wanted to play with Legos, but it was time to go out, right? So if you think about this, one way to think about this is to say, oh, well, here's a child that doesn't have any concept of time, right? And they don't understand time because, what we just talked about it, you can't do both and go out. Um, but when I was thinking about this, I realized that, if I was in that situation myself, a similar situation myself this week. I needed to do a bunch of things for work. I also wanted to go run. And the two things would not, you might say, fit in time. I could, of course, make time, for either of those. I couldn't do both, but I had to make a
Mhm.
decision. And I was a little bit upset. So obviously, the child was also upset because they wanted to play with Legos. And if you just say, okay, you don't understand time, and you come in and say, no, we just said that we're going to go out, no Legos, Legos are back in the closet. It doesn't matter how you do that, whether you do it with, a positive approach or, a more old school, maybe severe approach. You're still overriding that wish. And so I would say treating that child as a full human is to just engage with them to see how you can solve that problem. Now, a 2 year old, of course, is different from an older kid with whom you can
Sure.
have, more of a conversation, but you can still communicate with the 2 year old and, say, okay, so I see that you really would like to have these Legos and play with them. We also said that we are going out, so what can we do? Can you think of something, or do you want to bring them with you? Or, there's a myriad of other possibilities, right? It's not just Legos go back and we're going to go out. That's the way I think about that. Take that child's wishes seriously and treat them as people, and not just manage their behavior or, I could also go just pick him up, of course, with a 2-year-old, but that would not be, treating them as full human beings. All right. Well, thank you for listening
Awesome.
to this episode of ACE Parenting Together, Authentic, Connected, and Empathic. We are working to bring you content on best parenting practices that's worth your time and adds not to the noise, but to the signal. Let us know what you want to hear on this podcast. All questions are about parenting and thinking through real life situations are welcome.